Okay.
So once you get all these information points, you can then, because that's when the coaching begins. You need to find this information first before you can actually go, just do that and off you go.
So I was listening to a podcast the other day, and someone said this is in relation to business.
Yeah.
But they said action creates information. And actually, I feel like it's relevant to what we've just talking about here.
Yeah,
which
literally
is
the same thing.
Yeah, because the action of the training and everything else creates the information to know where you should start, and whether that's 2.5, 2002, 1800. I don't know. It depends obviously on your starting position, but I suppose the thing is just to start.
Yeah.
On a number, and if you don't know, guess. I mean, I think there's loads of calculators online, isn't there?
Yeah, loads. And people worry about the starting point way too much. Just create the information, get a month's worth of data, and go from there, and you'll find out.
But also, is there must when I found out and I started restricting my calories to a certain number, I'd find that if I did a certain number of calories, I'd feel mental, and then it was like, obviously that's not the right number. You know, you're too much and you're too restricted. And I'd find sometimes, I'm too restricted, I can't sleep properly. I was like, oh, okay. So the information is that's too low.
Yeah, massively.
And then the funny thing was, I was always like afraid to be at 2000. I was like, this is way too high if I'm trying to lose weight. And actually, that's a really good number.
Yeah, you should be in a deficit there for you.
Yeah,
decent level of muscle mass, the amount of activity you do, that'd be a deficit, really.
Exactly. And I was afraid to be at that sort. Once I realised, you need to be in a calorie deficit, and I was around 2000, I was like, this is way too high. This is far too high. And actually, complete misunderstanding of that, which was actually, that's actually a really good number to be around. And actually, if anything, I could probably get away with being a bit higher.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were afraid to start off on like 2000 or something like that. I know some people have been dieting for years and they yo-yo like I did at the beginning. And they're like, Ryan, I'm going to start my diet now. I'm going to start at 1800. I'm like, no way. And I was like, you've got a lot of weight to lose, as a polite friendly comment to make to that person. I'm like, start higher, start at 2.5. Just start somewhere.
The biggest thing I tell people is give yourself somewhere to go.
Yeah, start somewhere and then come down. And they're like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to lose weight fast enough. I'm like, yes, but you've been putting on weight for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm being polite to a friend, joking around. But so what? Start somewhere so you can just get into the rhythm of doing it.
Build good habits, build good routines, get a better understanding of your food and nutrition and what calories are in foods. Don't be like, right, extreme dieting. So at the gym, we've got about 12 people doing like a funky little weight loss challenge for the next 20 weeks, starting next week. So basically, everyone's put 100 quid into a pot.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And if only one person hits their weight loss goal, they get all of the money.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a prize. So 12 people, 100 quid each, 1,200 quid.
That is a great
And it's like 2 weeks before Christmas, so like it's a perfect timing. So if they all do it, they all get £100 back. I said, if no one hits it, it's going to charity. So we're just going to give the money to charity if no one hits their goals.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it should be fun and competitive. And it's just one of those little things that the gym would create like a community. So we'll see what happens over the next 12 weeks. But my message to the group was, don't drop your calories too low. You've got 20 weeks. What you don't want to get in is 6 to 8 weeks in and you're starving, you're sleep deprived, you're moody, you're irritable, like your training will dip. You kind of like peak that out at the end.
The thing is, you need energy to better train.
Yeah.
And that's why getting that balance is an energy balance. Getting that energy balance right is actually quite hard. And you do have to fail. When I started, I was used to I think back there I was doing keto or paleo or whatever. And then I was like, I'll do it okay for a couple of weeks and I'll totally burn out and crash. I was like, it only takes years of working that and going, oh, obviously your calories are too low. And also, if you're doing paleo, you could do with some carbs.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world to have some carbs. It's actually a really good thing to have balance in carbs. And now, just have more balance.
Yeah, with the carbs just get such a bad press, but
I don't know why they shouldn't.
It's like, yeah, if you are excessively overeating, it probably is from carbohydrates because they're so easily accessible.
Oh yeah.
And that's the issue, but
that's the thing. I know, and I don't know where. Obviously, this is people trying to sell books years ago on paleo and keto and stuff. And the obvious thing was to say, no one's going to tell you to drop protein. Someone's going to tell you to drop either fats, which is hard to explain.
Paleo, Atkins, whatever it is.
And that actually is dropping carbs. As soon as you say drop that food group, because then naturally people will stop eating crisps and cake and everything else, because that's, it all sits into that sugary kind of carb. But what people forget is that you're taking out one whole food group. So yes, you will lose weight, but it's not maintainable.
No,
but actually having oats, sweet potato, some rice, is just going to make it more manageable.
Yeah.
If I don't have any carbs for a few days, I'm in trouble. But if you just have some sensible carbs, oats, etc., then actually I can feel full most of the day, and you can actually go about your day with the right level of energy. But it takes, I sort of want to speak to my younger self and go, these are the answers? You didn't have to go through 10 or 15 years of trying to figure it out. Actually, the answers are actually really simple, but the information just wasn't available the way back then.
You can't buy that experience.
No.
And like, even if I tell someone this information, they obviously don't take it on well. It takes them, like you said, a few times to fail before they start to accept it and not have this emotional response every time the scale doesn't go in the right direction.
But people do beat themselves up. They really, because they feel like they failed. They failed at this new diet. My mum does it every year. I'm going to do it this time. I'm really going to do it this time, she says.
You can't convince her with the information you have.
And I'm like, you don't need to suddenly start, Mum. You can just reduce a little bit here and do a bit more exercise. I walk every day. Okay, well, you're already doing the exercise. Great, cool.
Yeah.
She's like, but my weight's not going down. I'm like, okay, well, somewhere you're eating some extra food, aren't you?
Yeah.
And it's just about getting them. But I don't want to give up wine. Okay, you don't have to give up all your wine. Okay, you
Some.
give up some of it. Just don't drink a whole bottle every night. Just drink a little bit.
Yeah, get out of the vineyard.
Yeah,
it's literally those little things that you kind of have to like drift people away, but it takes enough times, and hopefully you can pick up the habits and routine, and not have this emotional connection to fail, then binge, and then start with an extreme diet again.
Because that's the funny thing, isn't it? You fail, and most people will probably then go into some sort of binge, which then puts them back worse off to when they first started. And that was the whole thing years ago. People would be like, you start dieting, and I think also that word dieting is naturally saying you shouldn't, you're depriving yourself in some way.
Yeah, so when I say diet, I try to explain to people what we mean by diet is a phase of nutrition that is in a calorie deficit. It doesn't mean you're eating these food groups or X, Y, and Z. There's nothing associated to it apart from calorie deficit. Now, it has to be very mild, and you might not even notice, but that's all it means. Don't have any negative association to the word diet. So we just say calorie deficit now. Just completely get the word diet out of the way. So you're on a diet phase or a calorie deficit.
Because I think that's the thing as well. It's like, cause eating healthy and eating within a calorie deficit are totally different things.
Yeah.
You could easily be, an avocado is wonderfully healthy food to have.
Yep.
But if you eat the whole avocado and suddenly you've downed 400 or 500 calories, you're not eating really ideally designed for a calorie deficit, but you are eating healthy. And it's these sorts of things in the industry which were like, I'm trying to understand it. You've got to eat your healthy fats. I think you find out actually those healthy fats are really high in calories.
Yeah.
And you eat some nuts and suddenly you just down 250 calories. You're like, oh, but then it puts you in the wrong place. So it's all those things. It's all those types of failings. I end up getting quite, whenever when I found out, I was like, okay, well, I could look at the calories in these foods, and I was absolutely shocked. Bag of nuts, 1,000 calories. I'm like, what? We eat one of them in a night sometimes. But, just not always, but you just think, right, okay, well, I never knew that. I never knew how ridiculously high in calories some of these foods are.
That's why it's good to check yourself in with MyFitnessPal, whatever it is. So like,
yeah, you end up being shocked on some of the calories in some of these foods.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So like, you might just, not in a consultation, I'll say, but like on passing on the gym floor, they're like, oh, James, I just can't lose the weight, or this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, okay, then start tracking, blah blah blah. He goes, but I've been eating healthy. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they list off a reel of healthy foods. I'm like, well, how much of it did you have? They were like you just said, avocado bits and pieces. I'm like, but how many calories is that? They're like, oh, I don't know. Okay, well, you've eaten non-processed foods, healthy foods, granted, cool, but that doesn't mean you can't gain weight. They are non-processed foods. Probably harder to gain weight, probably less processed, less sugar and stuff in them, less, but like you said, if you're sitting there picking on nuts, like a bag of cashew nuts at night, you're probably not going to be losing much weight.
No.
And that's like you said, eating healthy and a diet, two different things. So there was a thing like, if it fits my macros approach a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Whereas like people were basically just eating garbage, like processed food, but then making it fit their macros. So you can get away with eating whatever you want, but because it's fitting your macros, you can still lose weight and you can still have a great body composition. Doesn't mean you're overly healthy though. Like you're still building your, these are basically the components you're building your body with. So they're low quality. You're not going to be building with, all the kind of things you want. All your tendons and your enzymes, all these kind of things are being built out of processed food. So you're probably not going to function very well or feel very well if you do that for a long period of time.
If you are eating the wrong foods, I say wrong foods, just, I don't know, by definition. So people often talk about sugar. Is it as bad as people make out? If you have got sugar in your diet and that type of processed sugar, which is it as bad as people say? And is it, what's the impact of having that sort of food?
I mean, it depends what we're defining as bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because there's nothing, it's not clear of what's good, what's bad, because it's all about, like you say, what we've come to a conclusion of pretty quickly, which is it is about balance.
If we're talking about like fatality, like the biggest factors for fatality is age and then body mass. So nothing you can do about age.
No.
So control your body mass, and then it's like small gains after that. You're not going to be making massive wins. So, in terms of like sugar and how bad it is, I think it has an impact on your mood and your ability to control your blood sugar. Obviously, diabetes is terrible. You don't want to be, diabetic. But I don't think we're talking about that level of extreme. But I don't think it's like, I'll have sugar. I'll have a beer at the weekend. I'll have ice cream or bits and pieces, but I try to find the balance and keep my body mass in check.
I think that's the point. What you just said there is about balance. When there's do you know Nigel who owns CrossFit?
Briefly, yeah, I know of him.
So I was talking to him years ago about it, because I used to go CrossFit Basingstoke, and he just said it is about balance, and he was just like, he says every day he eats reasonably healthy or eat within the right calories, and he just says in the evening he'll have a little bit of ice cream, just a tiny bit, just to keep him motivated. He said because he really likes ice cream.
Yeah.
And he said, but that is like a tiny percentage of his daily.
Yeah.
And he said, but it keeps him motivated the next day. And I think this is the thing that I didn't know all those years ago, and I don't think a lot of people know. They just think, well, now I'm going to try and lose weight, and I've got to be super clean, super healthy, super this.
Yeah.
And actually, to be able to do it long term, it's just about finding the right balance. You can still have some of those foods, but you just have to look at your overall diet and go, actually look at it like, one of the reasons I love Huel so much is because you can just easily replace a meal or have a Huel or have a salad, and actually just some of those more boring meals like breakfast or lunch, you can just have a nice, easy, normal meal and go, okay, I've done two good meals there.
Yeah.
And I think people just don't know that enough at the beginning. You're trying to get fit and healthy, and suddenly you're going to go, oh, starting January, the brand new health kick, and actually you can start winning today, tomorrow, if you just reduce your calories a bit, keep them in line, try and swap out some foods. Like it can be so subtle.
Very small changes.
Yes.
And over a period of 6 months, big impact. Been flying around.
It's been flying around the whole time.
Like one idea is like hitting a ball and the trajectory that ball takes. Like it only takes a very minor difference at the point of contact to the end point make a much bigger change. So it goes off in a different direction just because a very small difference at the start. So like it might be whatever it is that person overeats, chocolate. Go right. Well, I'm going to have X amount of chocolate and limit myself. And you want to do it daily, cool. But you've done that now. 6 months later, you've saved yourself 25,000 calories over 6 months. It's going to have an impact.
I think often what happens is people build themselves up to, I'm going to start this new diet. They try and go into it fully, and then within a few days, a week or so, they can't have that longer term view. I didn't at the beginning, and that's why I'd sort of yo-yo a bit. And it's just down to knowledge and also being really impatient. So I was talking to another PT the other day, actually got Jim just over there, and he was just said, well, most of this is psychological. It's about having the knowledge, but it's also psychological, because people are all, you know, are up and down. They have a bad day at work. They've got stress, and actually, it's just about just trying and become as balanced as you can, and but people are so impatient. Oh, now I want to be fit. And James Smith said it, you know, all those years. Well, you've been unfit for such a long time.
Yeah.
Why are you in such a rush to be fit as possible, to try and show your friends or whatever? It's just, you've got to just try and make these very slow incremental changes to try and become healthier.